York College way back when. I think it's been about 57, 58 years ago. We've been in out of contact with each other, but it's good to have you with us, Dennis. And we're looking forward to having you tell us about your mission to South Sudan. So without any further, Dennis Cady.
Green light comes on, put that in your pocket. Forget about it. I'm just probably going to walk around. We are from Wichita Falls, Texas. Doesn't get very cold up down there like it does here, but we're all right. My co-worker Chuck Dennis is going to be preaching for us in worship hour, and I'm going to talk to you about the mission work that we are partners in doing since 2011 in the newest country in the world. Some of this will be covered by the slides, so I'll let them pretty much do themselves. I do want to mention three things because I will forget that if I don't do it now. We'll put out somewhere here so it's available after worship. Help yourself if you'd like one, our recent newsletter that we put out. Before we got involved in South Sudan for many years, including some years as resident missionaries, our family were missionaries in Indonesia, largest Muslim country in the world in Southeast Asia. And I wrote a book on those events, Go Ye Meant Go Me. And just less than just a number of days in circulation. Now, Chuck and I have co-authored a book, Go Ye Meant Go Us. And this is our story of the work in South Sudan, up till last fall when we sent it to the publisher. There will be some of these available somewhere after worship if you'd like to have one. We work in South Sudan, like I said, the newest country in the world. The finger is pointing to East Central Africa. Two things I learned about, I knew it because of the Indonesia involvement. My wife is from Malaysia. I was a missionary there for 2 years after York experience. We graduated in '66, and I haven't seen this former young man, since the night of our graduation. And he is sure we've kept in remote contact through mutual friends, but sure to appreciate this renewal. I learned two things when we started getting involved in South Sudan. One is that most people in America talk about Africa like it's a country. You just listen to conversations, and they talk about Japan, Germany, Brazil, and Africa. Africa is 57 countries. It's a large continent. It does not get the credit it deserves. It is a land rich in resources. It has many, many problems in many areas. And let me interrupt myself right now by saying there's a young man here sitting by Jay who is a South Sudanese of the Dinka tribe, D-I-N-K-A, which is the tribe of the president, the largest tribe of the about 70 tribes in South Sudan. We knew when Jay told us Chol, a man named Chol that he knew, was going to be here. We said he's got to be Dinka because Chol, C-H-O-L, is a Dinka name. We have church folks in South Sudan. We are very glad to meet Chol. When he stands up, you'll see he's a tall guy. That is characteristic. Many Dinka people are tall. I realize I'm short, but it's rigged there. I got to look up to everybody, whether I want to look up to them or not. We are glad you are here. It's a continent. It's not a country. Africa. Second thing is, most people have the idea that everybody in Africa is black. That is far from the case. The north half, third, about from the finger up, are Arabic people. Egyptians are Africans. Algerians are Africans. They're not black people. From about the finger down are mostly black people. Except when you get to the very tip of Africa, the bottom tip, that's the Republic of South Africa, and a lot of them are white people. They are descendants of people from England that migrated there generations ago, and it is a white country with many, many black people. But the government and other prominent things there, everybody in Africa is not black. We work in South Sudan. Even our closest friends, many of them think we work in Southern Sudan. South Sudan is a different country from Sudan, just like North Dakota and South Dakota. It was all one country. In the Old Testament, this is Cush. If you know Old Testament history, this is Cush, was then. They were a British colony. They became independent from Britain in 1956, the country of Sudan, a Muslim country, one of the bad Muslim countries. It's one of the 3 or 4 that you can't send money to. They're ranked with North Korea and Iran. They don't like us, and much of it's religion-based. Well, in 1983, the Muslim government, they got a lot of trouble going on right now in the news. We're not affected by that. Khartoum is their capital. The Muslim government in Khartoum, how old were you in 1983? 4. Guys 10 years older than him became child soldiers. They were kidnapped, both sides. They ran out of 22 years civil war. The Khartoum government said everybody's going to become a Muslim or they're going to die. The bottom third, what now is South Sudan, was predominantly Christian. Now, I'm going to talk about this to these people, and so I would word some things a little different if I was talking just to you, and so you understand. You've been here enough. I want to speak very respectful because I do respect, but I'm speaking to my white audience. They fought a 22-year civil war. During that time, longest civil war ever in Africa, and they've had some long ones. During that time, 2 million people died. One of our slides that I'll run by in a minute is going to say were killed. Some of the people, older people that survived that, said probably more people died of starvation than from bullets and machetes. There were no more leaves on the trees for people to eat. The Nile River runs through there. It's fertile ground. The climate's okay. The equator's very close. But when you got to plant a garden, you got to cultivate the ground, plant a seed, plant a garden, wait till it grows. Before you can harvest and eat that garden, you got to sit still. And during the Civil War, you couldn't sit still. So people were on the run all the time in the bush, and there was a lot of starvation. But we work in South Sudan, the bottom place here. I've mentioned some of this already. Let me just see what I have not said. Many people fled to refugee camps. There were child soldiers from 10 years old and older. There were boys that were forced to be child soldiers. Both the Muslims did it and the Christians did it. They were trying to survive. 22 years, they ran out of soldiers. So they would go even to their own people, and they'd go to a father and they'd say, we've got to have one of your sons. We've got to have 2 of your sons. You pick one, but we're going to make a soldier out of them. And in some cases, I'm talking now about in the South, most of the fighting was actually in the South, which is now South Sudan. They were, the kids, the boys, teenagers, fought and attacked their own villages. I don't mean the village they grew up in, but their own South Sudan, what became South Sudan villages. They trained them. When they got old enough, not old enough, but when they decided they were old enough, they said, you go fight. You go attack your villages. If they refused, a common thing was they would line up 6 to 10 boys. They'd put a gun to one of them's head and pull the trigger. The others said, we'll go. When the war was over, some of those boys were not welcome back home. You have massacred your own people. The reason they massacred their own people is because of this. Had a very difficult situation. But many people spent those years in refugee camps. During that time, all effort was turned to the war, money and energy and all that. So schools, bridges, roads, hospitals, water wells, all of those things just got no attention. It became a country in July of 2011, and we arrived 5 months later. In the time we've been going, we've been there about 20 times, usually 2 or 3 weeks at a time. We were there much of the month of December. A lot of progress is taking place. They are rebuilding. As an indication, they are now in Juba. How long since you've been to Juba? 2011. Well, you wouldn't recognize some of Juba. Modern, big hotels. The Radisson Hotel is there. The American Embassy is building a new 18-acre American Embassy compound. Millions of dollars. A lot of progress taking place. In the cities, the villages are just about like they were 200 years ago. Many people will live in tukuls, which is a mud hut, poles in the ground and then plastered with mud and thatched roofs. I mentioned the Nile River goes through there. You're fortunate for water if you live close to the Nile, but everybody doesn't live close to the Nile. So water is carried from a distance. Some kids, usually girls and some women, seldom males, carry water, jerry cans, they call them, on their head, and will walk for great distances. One preacher recently built a mud hut for himself, a tukul for himself and his family, his wife, and the women that carried the water 15 miles on their head. Now, one way would have been empty, but coming back, it would have been full. Water is a problem. We had an email from a preacher this morning. They're 8 hours ahead of us. He told us about the village where he was at. He doesn't live at that village. He's an evangelist, but he was at that village today and told us about the attendance there. And there's 5 people wanting to be baptized, and there's no water to baptize them. In the rainy season, they got floods. In the dry season, they have, especially in this northern area where there's close to the desert, they have no water. So that's really a problem. There is no, nationwide, there is no electrical system, there's no potable water, no sewer system. There's not such a thing as a post office or a postage stamp or a street address. The road situation is improving. In Bor, we work mainly in 2 places. Bor, the capital of Zhongli State, the largest state, a city of maybe 100,000. Nobody knows what the population is, but it's a large city, just a huge village. There's not 1 inch of cement or asphalt, sidewalk, or street. The airport is gravel. 27% are literate statistically in the state where we have done most of our work until real recently, and I'll talk more about this Awil area in the north, but 19% are literate there. It's less than that in the Awil area. 44% of children that should be in elementary schools go to school. To teachers that don't even have books. They go to school where there's no light bulb, there's dirt floor. We'll see some pictures about schools in a minute. A girl statistically is 3 times more likely to die giving birth to a child than to finish primary school. A lot of poverty. But there's some good things. 80% of the population is under 30. Why is that a good thing? That's the case. That's a fact because killed off in the war. But why is it a good thing to have so many young people? Did you learn better when you was younger than older? Were you more willing to change before than you are now? Maybe you other older people, I find myself not as willing to change as I once was. But these people are eager to learn. They view Christianity as a progress thing, as a Western thing, and so it's kind of part of the package. So the door is open, and that's a good thing. I told you it was a British colony. English is the medium of instruction in school, and they have tribal languages, but in school the medium of instruction is English. Education is highly valued. Everybody wants education just as much as they can get. Parents want their children to go to get education. When we go to villages, we were there to some in December, but every time we happen, they ask us for help for 2 things in addition to the gospel. We go visit churches and we go talk to places about establishing churches. And they ask us for 2 things, water well, which they call a borehole, and school. Build us a school. Our children are growing up illiterate. They know that education is the way out of many of their problems. Education highly valued. We have Bible correspondence courses. Boy, that fits the niche real good for people that want to learn. We have converts from World English Institute and World Bible School, International Brotherhood online studies. Those are doing well and producing Christians. Because of the denominations there, they have taken people part way. Kind of like Martin Luther and the Reformation people took things part way when they took people from Catholicism, taught people to study the Bible themselves and think for themselves and to study for themselves. They didn't reach all the right conclusions, but they brought people part way, and I'm grateful for that. The denominations that have gone before us have prepared much soil for us. Because of them, people know what the Bible is. The Dinka Bible is only available, Dinka Word of God in Dinka is only available in the New Testament, not the Old Testament. And it's a bad translation. We talk about this some other time. But the Dinka translation is translated by a Catholic priest. And if you translate it back into English, most of us are very familiar with, I'll give you two verses, examples. John 3:23. John baptized in Aenon near Siloam. I said it wrong. John sprinkled people in Aenon near Salem because there was much water there. The Word of God, John 3:23, says John the Baptist sprinkled people. Mark 16:16. In the Dinka Bible, it says, he that believes and is sprinkled will be saved. That's what their Bible says. Now, so we come along later on and say, well, you listen to the Bible. You need to follow the Bible. Don't follow the decrees of men. Don't follow the doctrines of men. But when it gets over here, you listen to me. Don't listen to your Bible. You see the dilemma that creates for us? Now, there's ways to teach around that. And so we go to Romans 6, where you're buried in baptism. We go to Acts 8, where Philip and the eunuch went down into the water. And they're getting educated that there's some flaws in their translation. Nevertheless, it's in their Bible. And that's tough. But they know who God is. They've done things that make our job easier. We'd be a lot worse off if everybody was still an animist or a superstition people and had no concept of who the real God is. We have a great relationship with the government. We have no Department of Religion in America. We got a Department of Education. We got a Department of Health. We have no Department of Religion, separation of church and state. That is not true in many countries of the world. You don't function without approval from the Department of Religion. And you just must, if you're going to open a new church, if you've got to be registered and all of those things. And the best way to get that in a third world country is to do things that they need, to do humanitarian things. We don't think it's out of line at all to do humanitarian things. I believe Matthew chapter 25 tells me that if I see somebody hungry and thirsty and in need, and I can do something about it, and I don't, my going to heaven is in jeopardy. So we have always blended humanitarian work, benevolence, if you want to call it that, with preaching the gospel. Because we do that, the government likes us. We've got schools, get there in a minute. And that's the way we have chosen to do our humanitarian work, which opens the doors with the government. When we go to the government, when our preachers go to the government for permission for that, oh, you're the one that does this, and you're the one that does that. The biggest church is the Episcopal Church, ECS, the Episcopal Church of South Sudan, and some of their people say the Episcopal Church has been here for decades, and they take and do very little for us. That is an exaggeration. That's not entirely true, but that's what we've been told many times. And you, instead of taking things from us, you give things to us. You do things for people, and that has established an essential good relationship with the government without compromising anything. It's doing a good thing to accomplish a good thing. We have two elementary schools, New Sudan Primary School, which we abbreviate New Sudan Primary School. The first one has 1,200 students. It's in Bor, the capital city of the largest state. We own the campus, we own the facilities. It's what they call nursery classes, preschool through 8th grade. Children are eager to learn, but there are many challenges. I don't know if you can see. Let's see. Now we're going to try this little deal. I said I wouldn't use that, but look at there. You see what that boy's sitting on? It's sitting on a can he brought from home. If he wasn't doing that, he'd be sitting in the dirt. Most of the schools have dirt floors, no light bulb, no electricity, no water available on campus. Ours are a little better than that. I'll get there in a minute. But typical schools, they sometimes they bring cans, buckets, sometimes plastic chairs, take them home, but they want to learn. Some do have desks. A desk there in our schools will be a meter long. They use the metric system. Most all the world does, except America. But a meter is 39 inches, and it's a bench and a combination, a one-piece deal for a desk and a chair in 39 inches, and there'll be either 3 or 4 students use that desk, depending on the size of the students. And we have many desks. We don't have desks for everybody, but we're getting there. If we don't have enough chairs, they sit on the floor. Now, you see the attention these kids are paying? They want to learn. We don't have discipline problems, like distraction problems and all of that. They are there to learn, and they're motivated not only by themselves, but by their parents to learn. Education is very important. Second primary school is a branch of the same one, New Sudan Primary School. It's in Mangala, which is in an IDP camp. IDP stands for Indigenous Displaced Persons. So these people have had to flee their home because of tribal fighting and or because of flooding. And we have 300 students in that school. My old York friends, you remember Dan Copeland? Dan and Jolene Copeland built this school. They built the school first with tarps. Friends of ours, old York friends, lives in Arkansas today. This picture was taken when this had a white tarp. That wore out in a few years, so they have replaced that. Now we have sheet metal, corrugated sheet iron buildings. But that ought to be named Copeland Memorial School, but Dan would never go for that. But the Copelands have made that school possible. Students graduate. Then we have a vocational school. On our very first trip to South Sudan, we left home December 27th, 2011. Spent a good bit of January actually there on a survey trip to spy out the land, to try to find out where we wanted to put down some roots, what we wanted to get involved in. And we ended up in the office of the governor of Zhongli State, Kual Manyang. I've lived in America most of my life. How many of you have been in the office of a governor, state governor, sitting leisurely in it? I never have, but I was in the office of the governor. Chuck and I were. And we told the governor. Now, at that time, the church didn't exist. And the Episcopal Church would have blocked us from coming. So that's why we do most of what we do in the name of Starfish Foundation. We are Church of Christ, folks. Every church is a Church of Christ. But the schools are run by Starfish Foundation, cooperating with the Church of Christ. If we would have asked the government for land and permits and all that for the Church of Christ, the Episcopal Church would have blocked it, and it would never have happened. They have the power about like the Catholic Church has power in Italy. And so we got to be as wise as serpent and harmless as dove. I read that somewhere, not sure where. And so we were sitting at the governor's desk, and we said, we have traveled around your country. You are a new country, 5 months old at that time. You need everything. You need roads, you need water wells, you need schools, you need clinics, you need bridges. We can't do everything. What would you like us to do? He said, we need a vocational school, a vocational boarding school. He says, our people know how to kill, and that's about all. For 22 years, the people survived by killing. Now the war is over, and we are rebuilding. And people are coming in, laborers are coming in from neighboring Kenya and Uganda because they have the skills. All our people can do is dig the ditches for them. They send the money back to their families in Kenya and Uganda, and we're benefiting, but we're not benefiting like we could. We need our people trained with vocational schools. They do not need diplomas on the wall. They do not need academic training. That's not exactly true, but that's what he said. He said they need skills that they can labor. And so we started with, the government made available about 6 acres of land, and we built John Lee Christian Vocational Boarding School. Chuck wears many hats, one of them which he's a home builder, developer. He's a third generation of developer of subdivisions, and he's an architect, and he designed our campus. And we were ready to start that 14. We were ready to start it, open it in 2014, and in February, and in December of 2013, war broke out again. This time within the country between tribes. The president was of the Dinka tribe. The vice president was of the Nuer tribe. The elections were on the horizon. They haven't taken place yet. But the vice president announced he was going to run against the president, and the tribes lined up one against another, and there was a lot of fighting. Our campus was built. It was not yet occupied. It was going to be occupied in 3 or more months, and the town of Boer changed hands 4 or 5 times in about 2 weeks. The rebels took it. The rebels being from the vice president's party, tribe, and the government forces took it back. The rebels took it, but it exchanged hands 4 or 5 times, every time with destruction. We didn't know if we had a campus or not. They did damage to our campus. They did not destroy it. It was fixable. And so it delayed our opening a year. We opened then in 2015, February. It is a very practical vocational school, like a VOTEC here in America. 5 months terms. People told us you can't teach people enough in 5 years that don't know anything in 5 months. In 5 months. I had just done that in Indonesia for some time. We did it in 3 months. So our terms, we have two 5-term months a year with a break in between. We've tried different subjects and different skills. We've had to bring teachers in from outside the country because nobody local knew. Now that's gradually changing as we're able now to position some of our best graduates in our school to become teachers. But we had to start with importing teachers. And we wanted them to be Christian teachers, so we went out of the country, mainly to Kenya, Nairobi Great Commission School, and some places like that to get our first teachers. We tried different subjects. We have weeded it down now to we offer 3 skills subjects. We based that on getting enough students interested in a skill and being able to get a Christian teacher good enough to be a teacher in that skill. So this is we call it our financial elephant in the room, and elephant's always hungry. It costs about $2,200 to train a student. That's salary of teacher, meals. It's a boarding school. We feed them 3 times a day. We require them to live on the campus. We have dormitories there. We tried at one time to save the expenses of not having the board there. We could not have the same spiritual influence if they just came to classes and went back home. Our teachers live on the campus too. I climbed the water tower to take this picture. Now, since this picture was taken, 2 more buildings have been built. And it says there, you can read for yourself. We have male and female students. We teach computers. And again, we take in some cases, somebody that has never put their finger on a computer or a laptop, and we turn them out of there in 5 months. They can get a job with an NGO or a government entity, some of the best jobs available. People are after our better graduates. We teach electrical wiring, and we teach tailoring. On the back, you can see in the wall, looks like brown paper sacks. That's about what they are. That's what they make their patterns with. I don't know if anybody still sews dresses or not, but when my mom used to do it, she'd buy a little envelope and had all the right size and all the little things. You just laid it on the cloth and cut it out. And they make their own patterns and all of that. We use let's back up. Treadle sewing machines. No use giving them electric training on electrical sewing machine, because when they get out of there, they don't have one, so they have electrical sewing machines. These people then get a job somewhere. Some of them go into business with one another. My wife, who turned 80 in September, went with us in December for her first time. She thought, I guess, if she got to be 80, she's now old enough to go. And she had the ladies at a place of business. Some of our ladies, graduates, have went together, 4, 5, 6 of them, in a marketplace. You pick out a piece of cloth hanging on the wall. They've got 40 or 50 of them, and they go back in 2 days, and they've got you a tailor-made dress. And she had to make a couple of dresses for her. So some of them got their own business. Some of them work for other people, but this puts some money in their pocket. Now, they raise cows. They somewhat raise gardens, very poorly. They fish. If they're close to the Nile River, they catch fish. But they don't have any money in their pocket. They're hungry, they're poor, but they survive, but they don't have any money. So this type of thing gives them money, so that they've got $2 to buy money for medicine for a sick kid that otherwise is going to die, when $2 worth of medicine will solve that problem. So we are addressing those kind of things in a positive way. Everybody must pick one skills course, tailoring, electrical, or computers. Then everybody must take Bible. We are not a Bible school. We are a vocational school, but we are a Christian vocational school. And we have daily devotionals. We have classes in their classes, Bible classes in their classes. There's a congregation on campus. They're required to attend worship. So we teach the Bible. We also teach agriculture, which is an improved kind of gardening, mainly raised bed gardening and drip irrigation gardening, things that cost them nearly nothing, but things that they can do, helping them in that way. Not going to go over much time on this, but this is a recap of 17 classes that we have graduated. 963 total students. Now, when people talk about a school, the elementary schools are kids. That's true to an extent. We've had men up to 25 years old be there in 5th grade, because when they were a school age, they didn't have access to a school, or they were a soldier. But now they can go to school. So that's not typical. Most of that is school kids, but not exclusively. These are adults. Now, it says here ages 15 to 59. That 15-year-old, I don't know that individual, but that has to be an exception. But they're adults, teachers. This says what have graduated in each category. We could spend quite a bit of time on that, which we don't have. When we went to South Sudan, in December of 2011, there was no Church of Christ in this region, in this area. There are now 19 congregations in 10 states. Say it again, so I get it right.
In 3 of the 10 states.
3 of the 10, correct. That's why I bring him along. There were 9 new congregations established last year. 7 of those are in the north area, Wheel, A-W-E-I-L, which is a very ripe, fertile right now, just really taking off, and where we're devoting a great deal of our time. We were there in December, spent a good bit of time there. I'll talk about that just a little bit more. But there are 7 congregations, new congregations last year in that area. And the preachers tell us we can double that in 2004 if you'll help us conduct seminars. They call them seminars. We call them gospel meetings. They go out 3 days, ending on a Sunday, and they start baptizing people on Sunday. And all day or part of the day. It's not just a 1-hour service at night, but it's during the daytime. activity. And of those, if they're right, and we believe they're right, that in that area alone, there are 7 churches, there'll be 14 by the end of the year. 3 are on the verge of happening this week and next week because of seminars that are in progress or scheduled and all arrangements are made. Last year, there were 394 baptisms. I think that will be exceeded this year. Let's back up to vocational school. I told you that's the financial elephant in the room. It takes about $2,200 per student. We have capacity, dormitory space, bunk beds, and our capacity is 100 students each 5-month session. We've had that one time. Then we had to, financially, we just had to cut it back. We've cut it back to 50. This time we are straining at the seams, but we are determined to be 75 this term, which is just beginning right now. This causes the church to be admired by the government. Last term, there's a term starting right now. 6 months ago, that's 5-month term plus a month break. 6 months ago, there were 300 that applied. They could only take 75 students. So to keep the chaos of that down, this time they limited the applications to 100 and accepted 75. They said it's just chaos to, why let that many people apply when you're not going to accept that many? It is a Bible school. Last term, 62% of those who came during that 5 months were baptized into Jesus. I'm a graduate of 2 Christian colleges, and I attended a couple others. I sent my kids to a Christian college. I knew some people in this room at Christian colleges. I am a fan of Christian colleges. You show me a Christian college that's doing anything like that. They're barely even evangelistic at all. 62% last term baptized. And now they're out in churches and they're helping. Up in the north, an example, Uchan is a village. Got 2 numbers that I want to get right. This is at the village of Uchan. You see behind them a grass building, built by themselves, just out of grass. After worship that Sunday, this is the group that was baptized, 22. At Uchan now, 68 have been baptized. Ramau, which is nearby, 56 baptized. We were in both of those villages December. We were at Ramau in March when we were there. We try to go twice a year. In Ramau, little kids, 2, 3, 4 years old, ran from us screaming. Never seen a white person. We've been in villages where no white person has ever been. Now, I'm not saying nobody in that village has ever seen a white person. Some of them have been to town. Some of them haven't. But little kids, one boy, 10 or 12 years old, and I would only know this because somebody translated it for me, asked his mother. I don't know if you've noticed, but Joel's skin color is different than ours. 10 or 12-year-old boy asked his mother, why didn't God put skin on those people? But we are welcome. We are embraced. They have given us gifts, which they cannot afford to give. When we were there in December, they gave my wife a goat, about a half-grown kid goat. I said, we cannot take that goat to America. They said, we got a deal for you. If you'll leave that goat here, it's a female goat. They had other goats. We will feed that goat. We will breed that goat. She may have 2 kids. Every time there's goats to wean, kids to wean, we will let Susan know. And Susan can decide to whom do we give those goats to help people. So my wife has a goat in the South Sudan given by these people. At Ramau, this is actually the village where the boy said, why didn't God put skin on those people? They sometimes start out meeting under a tree. They meet they build their grass shelters, temporary buildings, they call them. That works pretty well to keep the sun out. It doesn't keep the rain out. They have rainy season and dry season, so they put tarps, and we sometimes provide the tarps for them. Inside of a building, this building has log benches. Most of them have none. One of our needs is plastic folding chairs. We try to provide these for churches, $15. We'll buy and deliver to a church a plastic folding chairs. Some of these needs, I mentioned this newsletter, some of these needs are described in there. The last thing, we've got churches of babies, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old spiritual babies. It's real easy to teach somebody you need to be baptized to be saved. And our preachers do an excellent job of that. But they need to be taught so much more. So we brought, in December, we had a 6-day leadership training program up in the north where many of these new churches are. We asked each church to send in 2 men of their choice. And we had 29, and then the town where it was actually had, they sent some extras. We had 29 or 30 men there for a 6-day teaching seminar. We each taught 4 hours a day for 6 days, and we just must do more of that. We just got to be training. And they went home motivated, they went home better with more knowledge, and they went home with a renewed concept of who the church is. They found brethren in other parts that they didn't even know there were churches of Christ there. Some of them thought we're the only ones. And we brought them together like a college lectureship or an area-wide gospel meeting, and it opened their whole eye up for what the Lord's church is and can be in their place. Time is totally gone. We're going to be around this afternoon. Somebody else will announce about that, and we'll be less formal at that time. But be sure if you want one after church, we'll have them somewhere to get a couple of books and newsletters. Thank you very much. Nobody has gone to sleep on me. Thank you very, very much.
It's fully, I have to in there.
I don't know who needs this, but I'm going to put